You will come out. The chief's words sliced through the morning. Around him, 200 warriors. 200 weapons aimed at Royce's cabin. He knew one wrong move meant death. But it wasn't the chief's threat that froze him. It was her, Kiona, the chief's daughter. Her eyes, locked on his, screamed a silent plea. Don't acknowledge me. 4 months ago, he'd saved her life. Now she stood amongst those who'd kill him. Only she knew the kindness he'd shown. Only she knew about the scar hidden beneath her clothes. And Royce sensed with chilling certainty that her quiet act of defiance, her hidden debt, held the only key to his survival. They had no idea how her quiet kindness would change everything. Not a clue. You will come out. The chief's words sliced through the morning. Around him, 200 warriors. 200 weapons aimed at Royce's cabin. He knew one wrong move meant death. But it wasn't the chief's threat that froze him. It was her, Kiona, the chief's daughter. Her eyes, locked on his, screamed a silent plea. Don't acknowledge me. 4 months ago, he'd saved her life. Now she stood amongst those who'd kill him. Only she knew the kindness he'd shown. Only she knew about the scar hidden beneath her clothes. And Royce sensed, with chilling certainty, that her quiet act of defiance, her hidden debt, held the only key to his survival. They had no idea how her quiet kindness would change everything. Not a clue. Dawn hadn't yet broken when the drumming started. Not the rhythmic pulse of celebration, but a frantic, guttural beat that vibrated through the floorboards of Royce's small cabin. He'd lived in the shadowed quiet of these mountains for 3 years, each sunrise a testament to his solitude. But today, the wilderness echoed with something else entirely. The war drums of the Neshoba tribe. Royce rolled from his cot, the rough spun blanket falling to the floor. He crossed to the single window, the familiar scent of pine and damp earth doing little to calm the knot tightening in his gut. He peered through a gap in the rough-hewn logs. Warriors, dozens, maybe hundreds, encircled his clearing. Their faces, painted with streaks of ochre and black, were grim masks in the pre-dawn light. Horses shifted restlessly, their breath clouding the frigid air. At the front, astride a massive black stallion, sat a man whose authority radiated like heat. The chief, Neshoba. His silver-streaked hair was bound with feathers, his gaze sharp enough to cut steel. Beside him, almost an afterthought, sat a woman. Royce's breath hitched. Kiona. He hadn't seen her since that day in the ravine, hadn't even known her name until now. But her image had been burned into his memory. The flash of dark eyes, the desperate strength in her grip, the crimson stain blossoming on her buckskin dress. He involuntarily reached for his ribs, tracing the pale scar hidden beneath his worn flannel shirt. 4 months ago, he'd been tracking a wounded elk when he'd heard her screams. A pack of wolves had her cornered, their eyes gleaming with hunger. He'd emptied his rifle, driven them off, and carried her, bleeding and unconscious, to a small cave he knew further up the slope. She'd woken feverish, disoriented, and desperate to return home, but unable to stand. He'd cleaned her wound, a savage tear along her side, stitched it closed as best he could, and offered her what little food he had. She hadn't spoken much. Her gratitude conveyed more through her haunted eyes than any words. By the time she was strong enough to travel, she was gone, vanished into the mountain mist, leaving behind only a single, intricately beaded bracelet. He'd kept it tucked away in his drawer, a silent reminder of a debt he never expected to be called upon. Now seeing her amongst her people, the bracelet felt like a brand. Her gaze flicked to his window, a fleeting connection in the chaos. It wasn't a look of hatred or even recognition. It was a plea, a silent warning. Chief Neshoba raised a hand, silencing the drums. The air crackled with tension. You are on Neshoba land, his voice boomed, amplified by the stillness of the morning. You have no right to be here. Royce remained motionless, his hand hovering near the hunting knife at his hip. He knew these lands, knew the history, knew the broken treaties, the stolen promises, the simmering resentment that fueled every glance, every gesture. He was just another trespasser in their eyes, guilty by association. Neshoba shifted in his saddle, his gaze hardening. You will come out. You will answer for your crimes. Royce felt Kiona's gaze on him again, a silent urging to stay silent. The weight of 200 eyes pressed against the cabin walls. But it was her gaze he felt most keenly. The weight of a secret shared, a debt unpaid, a future uncertain. He knew with bone-deep certainty that whatever happened next hinged on his next move, and more importantly on her. The door to the cabin creaked as he pushed it open, the sound echoing in the tense silence. He stepped into the growing dawn, hands raised, a target in the crosshairs of history and circumstance, and although she did not reveal, Royce knew that she knew he had saved her life. Steady, but Royce noticed the slight tremor in her shoulders. The fear she had been holding back for hours was finally showing. "Your father know," Royce said quietly. "He's known for weeks," Kiona replied, not looking at him. "I tried to hide it, tried to pretend I had been alone when the animals attacked. But my brothers found tracks. 2 sets, one heavy, one light. They followed them back to your cabin. Why didn't he come for me sooner?" She finally turned to face him. In the filtered light of the riverbed, her eyes were darker, more vulnerable. "Because I steady," but Royce noticed the slight tremor in her shoulders. The fear she had been holding back for hours was finally showing. "Your father knows," Royce said quietly. "He's known for weeks," Kiona replied, not looking at him. "I tried to hide it, tried to pretend I had been alone when the animals attacked, but my brothers found tracks. 2 sets, one heavy, one light. They followed them back to your cabin. Why didn't he come for me sooner?" She finally turned to face him. In the filtered light of the riverbed, her eyes were darker, more vulnerable. "Because I begged him not to. I told him you saved my life when you had no reason to, that you asked for nothing in return, that you let me leave without questions or demands." "You don't owe me gratitude," Roy said. "I know." She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the thin scar on her collarbone where the animal's claws had torn through skin. "But I wanted to understand why. Why a man living alone in these lands would risk everything for someone he didn't know. Maybe I'm tired of being alone." The words hung between them, honest and raw. Kiona's expression shifted, something softening in her features. She reached up slowly, her fingers brushing the edge of his jaw where dirt and sweat had dried. It was the first time she had touched him deliberately, not out of fear or necessity, but out of choice. "My father brought 200 warriors here to test you," she said softly. "He wanted to see if you were like the others who came before. Men who took without asking, who saw our land as empty because we weren't building towns on it. And what did he learn? That you're different, and that difference is dangerous." Royce didn't understand. Dangerous how? Because if our people accept you, if they see that not all settlers are enemies, it challenges everything we've used to survive. The anger, the mistrust, the walls we've built to protect ourselves. Her hand was still against his face, her thumb tracing the line of his cheekbone. "And if I accept you, I betray the memory of everyone we've lost to men who look like you. I'm not asking you to betray anyone." "I know," she whispered, "but wanting you feels like I am." The confession settled between them like something too fragile to touch. Royce wanted to close the distance, to kiss her, to prove that what existed between them was stronger than the history trying to tear them apart. But he didn't move because this moment wasn't about what he wanted. It was about giving her the space to choose. Above them, the gunfire stopped. The sudden silence was worse than the noise. It meant someone had won or someone had retreated. Either way, the balance had shifted. Kiona pulled back, her hand falling away from his face. "We need to go back." "Wait." Royce caught her wrist gently. "Whatever happens up there, whatever your father decides about me, I need you to know something." "What?" "I do it again. Save you, protect you, all of it, even knowing it would lead to this." She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for something she couldn't name. Then she leaned in and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture that felt more intimate than any kiss. "Then we're both fools," she said. When they climbed back out of the riverbed, they found Noah standing among the bodies of 3 land grabbers. The rest had fled. The warriors were tending to their wounded when Royce and Kiona emerged from the riverbed. 2 men had serious injuries but would survive. The rest bore only scrapes and bruises. Nishoba stood at the center, his rifle still in hand, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the land grabbers returning. When he saw Kiona, something in his posture softened just slightly, enough for Royce to understand that beneath the chief's hard exterior was a father who had spent hours fearing for his daughter's life. "The documents are safe," Kiona said. Neshoba nodded once. Then his attention shifted to Royce and the softness disappeared. "We need to talk alone." Kiona's hand brushed against Royce's arm, a silent gesture of support, or maybe warning. He couldn't tell which, but he followed Neshoba away from the others, toward the treine, where the morning shadows still clung to the ground. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Neshoba studied Royce the way someone studies a problem they can't quite solve. Finally, he broke the silence. "My daughter has never asked me for anything, not once in her life. She accepts what is given and bears what must be endured." His voice was measured, careful. "But when I told her we were coming here to deliver justice, she begged me to spare you. Not with words, with silence, with the way she couldn't meet my eyes." Royce kept his expression neutral. "I never asked her to do that. I know which makes this harder." Neshoba turned to face him fully. "You saved her life. That creates a debt. In our culture, such debts are sacred. They cannot be ignored or dismissed." "I don't want repayment. What you want is irrelevant." Neshoba's tone sharpened. "What matters is what you've done and what it means for my people if I let you walk away without acknowledging it." Royce understood. Then this wasn't just about gratitude or honor. It was about perception. If Neshoba simply let him go, it would look like weakness. Like the chief had been swayed by one act of kindness into forgetting centuries of betrayal. "So what do you want from me?" Royce asked. "Proof," Neshoba said. "That you're not like the others? That your help today wasn't strategy or manipulation? That when you look at my daughter, you see a person, not a conquest." The words hit harder than Royce expected, because there was truth in them. Men had used indigenous women before, traded on their vulnerability, then discarded them when it was convenient. Neshoba had every reason to believe Royce might do the same. "I see her," Royce said quietly. "I see someone strong enough to survive alone in a ravine with injuries that would have killed most people. Someone who refused help until she had no choice. Someone who came back here knowing what it would cost her and chose to protect me anyway." Neshoba's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Understanding maybe, or recognition of honesty when he heard it. "The men who attacked us today will return with more," Neshoba said, shifting the conversation. "They want our land deeds destroyed so they can claim ownership through force. This cabin, your land, sits on the path they'll use." Royce saw where this was going. "You want me to leave?" "No," Neshoba's answer surprised him. "I want you to choose. You can abandon this place and avoid the war that's coming, or you can stay and fight beside us. But if you stay, it's not just for her. It's for all of us. And there's no walking away once that choice is made." It was a test, the kind that had no right answer, only consequences. Stay and risk everything for people who still didn't fully trust him. Leave and prove that his earlier actions were just momentary decency, nothing more. Royce looked back toward where Kiona stood among the warriors. She was watching them, her face unreadable from this distance, but he knew what she was thinking. Knew she was waiting to see what he would choose. "I'll stay," Royce said. Neshoba studied him for another long moment. Then he nodded. "Then tomorrow, you learn to fight our way." Night fell over the camp the warriors had established near Royce's cabin. Fires burned low, casting flickering light across faces marked by exhaustion and tension. Tomorrow would bring another fight. Everyone knew it. The land grabbers wouldn't give up after one failed attempt. Roy sat near the edge of the camp, checking his rifle, making sure every part was ready. He had fought before, but never for something that felt this important. Never alongside people who had more reasons to mistrust him than accept him. Kiona approached quietly, her footsteps barely audible against the dry earth. She sat beside him without asking permission, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence between them had changed over the course of the day. It was no longer filled with secrets and caution. Now it held something else, possibility. You didn't have to stay, she said finally. Yes, I did. She turned to look at him, the firelight catching the angles of her face. Why? You could start over somewhere else. Somewhere safer, somewhere without all of this. Royce set the rifle down and met her eyes. Because running doesn't change anything, and because I'm tired of living like the past is the only thing that matters. The past is all we have sometimes, Kiona said softly. It's what reminds us who we are, what we've survived. It can also trap you, Royce replied, make you so afraid of repeating old wounds that you can't see when something new is worth the risk. Her hand moved to the beaded cord on her wrist, the one she had been wearing the day he found her. I left this for you that morning when I disappeared. I wanted you to know I was grateful even if I couldn't say it. I kept it, Royce admitted. It's in my cabin on the windowsill where the light hits it every morning. Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, maybe. Or the realization that he had been holding on to her memory just as much as she had been holding on to his. My father will expect you to prove yourself tomorrow, she said, her voice quieter. Now he'll put you in the most dangerous position. Test whether you meant what you said about fighting for all of us. I know you could die. I could. Royce reached over and took her hand, the first time he had initiated contact between them. Her fingers were calloused from work, strong and steady. But I'd rather risk dying for something that matters than keep living for nothing. Kiona's breath caught. She looked down at their joined hands at the contrast of his skin against hers, at the way their fingers fit together like they had been designed for this exact moment. If you survive tomorrow, she said slowly, carefully, what happens then? It was the question that had been hovering between them all day, the one neither of them had dared to ask because the answer required hope, and hope was dangerous when death felt so close. Then we figure it out, Royce said. Together, she leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder, her hands still clasped in his. It wasn't a kiss, wasn't a promise, but it was an acknowledgement that whatever existed between them was real enough to fight for. Across the camp, one of the warriors called out a warning. Horses in the distance. Too many to be strays. The land grabbers were regrouping, bringing reinforcements. The battle everyone had been preparing for was about to begin, and this time there would be no retreat. The land grabbers came at dawn with 15 men, more rifles, and the confidence of people who believed numbers guaranteed victory. They were wrong. Inshoba had positioned his warriors in a crescent formation around the cabin, using the terrain to force the attackers into a narrow approach where their numbers became a disadvantage. Royce stood at the point where the crescent met the cabin wall, exactly where Nishoba had placed him, the most exposed position, the one that would draw the most fire. It was the test Kiona had warned him about, and Royce knew what it meant. Survive this. Prove his commitment or die trying. The first wave of gunfire shattered the morning stillness. Royce kept his breathing steady, his aim precise. He dropped 2 men before they could reach cover. The warriors on either side of him fought with a coordination, born from years of defending their land against people who saw it as empty. One of the land grabbers broke through the line, charging directly at Royce with a knife drawn. Royce sidestepped the attack, used the man's momentum against him, and sent him sprawling into the dirt. Before the man could recover, one of the younger warriors was there, disarming him with efficiency that spoke of countless similar encounters. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it ended, the land grabbers who survived were retreating into the distance, leaving their weapons and their dead behind. Nishoba's people had won, not just this fight, but the right to keep their land, to hold on to the documents that proved their ownership. Royce lowered his rifle, his hands shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. Blood ran down his left arm where a bullet had grazed him, but the wound was shallow. He would live. Nishoba crossed the clearing toward him, his expression unreadable. When he reached Royce, he placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that carried more weight than any words could. You fought well, Nishoba said simply. You protected what matters. That is how a man earns his place among us. It wasn't just acceptance. It was belonging. Kiona appeared at her father's side, her eyes moving immediately to the blood on Royce's arm. Without a word, she pulled a strip of cloth from her belt and began wrapping his wound. Her hands were gentle but sure. the same hands that had once been too injured to protect herself. "You kept your promise," she said quietly, her face close to his as she tied off the bandage. "I always keep my promises." She looked up at him, and in that moment, with the morning sun breaking through the clouds and the sound of her people celebrating their victory behind them, something shifted. The fear that had held them both back dissolved. What remained was clear and undeniable. "My father has offered you a choice," Kiona said. "You can rebuild your cabin here on land that now has protection from our tribe, or you can leave and start fresh somewhere else." "What do you want me to do?" Royce asked. Her hand moved to his chest, resting over his heart. "I want you to stay. Not because you owe us anything. Not because of what you did 4 months ago or what you did today, but because when I look at you, I see someone who chose to stand when he could have run. Someone who sees me as more than what my tribe represents." Royce covered her hand with his. "Then I'll stay. I'll rebuild. And whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Nishoba, who had been standing close enough to hear, nodded once. Then it settled. "You have earned your place here. The land is yours to keep, and my daughter's choice is hers to make." It was more than Royce had hoped for. It was a new beginning built on the foundation of one moment 4 months ago when he had chosen to help someone who needed it. That choice had led to this one, and this choice would lead to a life he had never imagined possible. Kiona smiled, the first real smile he had seen from her, and in that smile Royce saw his future. The cabin would be rebuilt, the land would be protected, and the man who had lived alone for so long would never be alone again. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable tale from the frontier, where courage and destiny collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.